Brodes Media.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. We are crowning a Stanley Cup champion, which is just absurd. I remember when we started this, when I had the idea to talk about hockey nationally, not so much just the Flyers. And, you know, I love this damn sport. When I watch Steven Stamkos hoist the Stanley Cup and kiss it 5,000 times with everybody else, it brings me back to when I'm 5 years old with my rollerblades in my garage when it was raining and in my driveway when it wasn't raining. And I would score the Game 7 overtime winner 3,000 times the night before dinner happened. And, you know, it's the best feeling in the world to see it being hoisted. It's also devastating because that means hockey's over. But, yeah, look, I mean, it was what it was. Tampa Bay is a very strong team that I don't think anyone really would have gave them a run for their money. Maybe Vegas, but ultimately the champions, the Stanley, is the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's where it's at. Durso, what's going on, man?
Not much. I'm kind of like echoing your thoughts. It's cool to watch someone win the Stanley Cup. You think about it all, like there's guys who think about that their entire lives. It was especially cool knowing there were fans back in the building that got to experience it. Nothing against what happened last September. It's better with fans. You've got to experience it that way.
You know what's crazy? I thought Victor Hedman's hoist almost had more of a reaction than Stamkos's. Am I going crazy?
I think the thing with Stamkos' one is that you're waiting for it. You know he's the captain. There's such anticipation, and actually the fact that they did the same thing as 9 months ago, where the whole team gathers around and takes that picture first, and then they present it. You're almost like, come on, get on with it. Like you should want the thing as soon as possible. It's the greatest trophy in all sports. Hand it over and let's go skate with the thing. So I almost think like there was that buildup. It was such a high buildup that you're waiting for that moment, and once anybody got their hands on it, and Hedman was the second guy, and I don't know why I'm surprised by that. Like I really shouldn't be, because he's about as heart and soul of this team as anybody is. I mean,
who would you have given it to if you were Stammer? See, I thought Savard got in the mix there pretty early.
Savard went third, I think. So I thought he was going to get it second because he wasn't part of the team a year ago. That was the only reason. There wasn't, it's funny because for just about any other team that was in this playoff, as we really got down to it, whether it would have been any of the other three teams that were in the Final Four, there was pretty much at least one guy you could think of that you go, he's the obvious, give it to him next. He's paid his dues. He's been around for a long time. I'm trying to think of exactly who, like, obviously, I almost feel like if Montreal would have won the Stanley Cup, Shea Weber gets it first as captain, then it's going to Carey Price. He's going to be the next guy, and everybody's waiting for it. If it was the Islanders, it probably would have been a guy like Andy Green, who's been in the league for a really long time. If not Andy Green was with the team a little longer. If not him, maybe Travis Zajac, same thing. Guy who's played a lot of games, waited a long time. I almost don't even know who would have gotten it for Vegas next.
You know what's great? I'm sitting here and I actually have the goosebumps running through my veins.
Thinking about those guys.
Well, yeah, like in what universe, right? I mean, we're hockey fans, and if you're a diehard hockey fan, you get it. But if you're just a casual watching the game, oh, Savard got it third. This guy got it second. That doesn't even come to your mind.
Right.
That it's such hockey tradition. It's just a big part of the game. And those are the little things that, and look, I'm not going to be that hardo hockey guy because I love basketball just as much as I love hockey. I love football just as much as I love hockey. I love them all. I really do. I think they're beautiful in their own special way. But playing hockey since I was 4 years old, there's obviously that element to it where it's different watching the handshake line, watching the hoisting of the cup, and those little tiny things. It just separates from the Larry O'Brien trophy and Kobe Bryant's picture, which is, super famous, of him holding the trophy. All that stuff is great. But to me, these little things in hockey, it just hits different. I literally just had the chills running through my damn veins, Durso.
Yeah, I mean, and here's something else, too, that I don't know if you noticed this at the end of the game. I thought that was a incredibly long handshake line in terms of the amount of time they actually spent chatting with each other, congratulating each other on a great series, great seasons. Like, the amount of respect that you could see from both sides was very evident because they took a long time to get through that line and really go through and just respect each other in that sense, where like there are handshake lines that don't last more than 2 minutes and it's over and it's done with, and one team skates off and is happy and one's not,
You think a lot of that though is, and I'm just spitballing here, I don't have statistical data and a stopwatch.
Sure.
But do you think a lot of that has to do with because it's the Stanley Cup Finals. If you go back to just Stanley Cup Final handshakes compared to first, second round exit type of teams, is there a difference because of like, look, fellas, we get it. You know, you worked your ass off to get here, came up just shy, can't be a great feeling. We respect the battle that you had kind of thing.
It could be. I mean, especially when you get that far and you're whatever number of wins away on the losing end of it, you know, in this case, 3 away like Montreal was. You know, I'm sure that there's more to it than that because it's the last one. But I don't even recall the handshake after Game 7 against the Islanders being that long. And that's a battle to the end as well. And it goes the distance, and it's a 1-0 game in Game 7. Like, if there's any like tremendous amount of respect that's going to come, it's clear, you know, it's from a game like that. And yet I don't remember that one being near as long as the one last night where you go, look at just how much they respect each other for how far they got. I think in Montreal's case, how much they respect Tampa for what they've done over the course of now, I guess, just a matter of 365 days, realistically. I mean, let's this way. It was maybe, what were we talking about? Maybe exactly a year ago, close to that. It was coming back, doing the training camp to come out of that pause and start the run to the end of the previous season. And now they've won another one in that span of time. Like, you can't imagine what these last 365 days have been like for the Tampa Bay Lightning to go through, coming back from a pause, getting ready to play in a tournament, spending, I believe that they actually say the number a couple times. What is it, like 95 days in a row with each other just by themselves in the bubble and in their own bubble training and all that stuff like that to win the Stanley Cup for the first time as a core, as that group. And then to come right back 5 months later, whenever it was, when, you know, September goes by, October, November, December, into January. Now you're back in January and you do it all over again in about 7 months. Like it's crazy. I can't imagine the feeling. Exactly.
I know. Now, one thing I was thinking about today when I was at the gym. All right, so I was sitting there, and I was doing some shrugs today. I was working with the kettlebell a little bit, just getting after it, putting in a good sweat. And I was thinking about last night and what went down. And, you know, a lot, and I had a comment in Coffee with Brodes before I went to the gym, so I think maybe that's why I thought this way. And it was a comment pretty much disrespecting the Habs, saying, this is why it's bad for the Habs being there, and they didn't deserve it, yada, yada, yada. I went back and forth. I called him a moron. You don't understand anything. And here's what I did watch.
I did watch a little bit of it, so yes, I saw this.
But here's what I'm thinking while I'm working out today. Game 2 was all Habs. It really was all Habs. That Coleman goal with 0.3 seconds left, I said afterwards, it possibly could have changed the entire series. And now we see that maybe that is true. Vasilevsky stood on his head that second period. And then last night in Game 5, let's not act like the Montreal Canadiens played this horrible game and they were not in it. Vasilevsky, closeout game, another shutout. I mean, that's just what the guy does. But the Habs, in 2 of these games, in a 7-game series, was right there. And if the series goes 6, you think of it significantly different than if it goes 5. So when I look at 2 of these games in this 5-game series, they easily could have went to the Habs, which, you know, that just shows you it wasn't as brutal and disgusting as a 5-game series from the surface sounds.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through Twitter right now because I saw a tweet that was outstanding, and this is a fair point. First of all, I think it was the last show I even said, John Cooper said it at the beginning of the series. You don't fluke your way to the Stanley Cup final. You've got to be a good enough team to get there, and you've got to go through challenges and through adversity. Their adversity was down 3-1 to Toronto. They win that series. They rally around a fallen teammate after winning Game 1 against Winnipeg. The series was over right then and there in my mind. I
actually forgot all about that play.
They rally around that. So there's adversity. They play out the series against Vegas. Halfway through, you lose your head coach because he gets COVID. There's more adversity, and you still win. And now you're in the Cup final. Okay, you ran into an absolute juggernaut. There's no question about it. And this was it was a Down Goes Brown on Twitter. I saw this just actually not long before we started doing this. He puts down, I'm glad Tampa won. Montreal's run gave every team some sense of hope, which has value in a 32-team league, which it is now, of course. But the Lightning are the team that you want your team to be when it grows up. And it's more fun to watch a league where being the best matters. And I agree with a lot of that, but that's the point of it being Montreal's point in there being exactly what matters here. Every team every year has a shot. because you just get on a run at the right time. You put it together. You get that right mix. Everybody starts gelling really well. You get a good locker room. You get a good team like that. You don't have to have the best players on paper to make it there. We've seen 8 seeds win the Stanley Cup. It happens. That's what I love about hockey. What would you rather have? And it's not a knock on another sport, but would you rather watch the same NBA final 4 years in a row with the same 2 teams? Or would you like some parity in the league where everybody has a shot if they just go and get the right guy?
Because I'm biased towards LeBron James.
No,
so
I know,
LeBron
but
makes it every time. I'm like, let's go, baby.
Well, and in fairness, isn't there an expectation? If you expect the best team to be there in the NHL, for example, then don't you expect the best player to be there at the end too? Sure you do. Because the NBA is more individualized. You can rest a lot on one player to get you to a certain point. It's not the same way in hockey. It takes everybody. And it's funny. I had a whole section of notes from the game and then a whole section afterwards of just a lot of good points that I just started thinking up about the whole collective series, Tampa Bay as a team, things like that. How's this for depth? Okay.
I was just thinking the same thing. So
okay.
Like you read my mind.
How's this for depth? So in the Stanley Cup final, just the 5 games of the final, I didn't go that deep. I did write down their final numbers, but in the Stanley Cup final alone, Tampa Bay got goals from 13 players. Now imagine, you dress 18 skaters a game. There might be some moving parts over the course of a series. So what? In a 5-game series, you may dress 19 or 20, I guess, under normal circumstances. So you're telling me that 7 players didn't score for this team in the entire thing. Go down the list. Eric Chernak, Yanni Gourde, Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, Anthony Cirelli, Blake Coleman, Andre Palat, Jan Ruda, Victor Hedman, Tyler Johnson, Barclay Goodrow, Patrick Maroon, and finally the last one of the series, his first of the final, is the game winner in the cup clincher. It's Ross Colton.
How about Point though, right? Like we talked about.
There you go, and that's my next point.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The only players in the final didn't score a goal among others, and I'm holding Braden Point for last in a way. I mean, we already said him, so he didn't score in the final. But Alex Killorn, who didn't play in the final 4 games because only broke his fibula and was going to still got surgery to put a rod in his leg and was still going to try to come back if it went 6.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're really warriors. Is. And then you go to the other guys. Luke Shen didn't score a goal in the final because he didn't play in the final, but he had a goal in the playoffs. Ryan McDonough, who set up a key goal in game 4, sorry. David Savard set up the winner in game 5, primary assist. Matthew Joseph set up Pat Maroon's goal in game 4. So everybody's involved. There's not a single guy I can mention. The only other guy I had on the list, by the way, who didn't score a goal in the entire playoffs was Mikhail Sergachev. And he only blocks shots, hits people, does all the dirty work.
Though, is like when you think about the special teams unit for Tampa, and you got to credit Montreal for some of the things that they can do with the penalty kill. And I think that's one of the strongest parts of what we talked about with their team. But you talk about all this firepower, and you talk about Victor Hedman and Stamkos and Point and Kucherov, and the way that when they set up in the offensive zone, damage is going to be done. They move the puck so well. They find an open guy backdoor, tic-tac-toe, or if it's not, it's your good old classic, similar to Ovechkin, where you know what's coming, and you're not going to stop it. And they're going to find a way to get Steven Stamkos to rip or Kucherov the puck, and he's just going to rip it and find a way. So, they have that, yet they weren't even that smooth at times with their power play. Now, I'm crediting the Habs, but at the same time, for them to have this success, they just find ways. I thought they did a great job signing off on the NBC broadcast, but also bringing up the ability of Tampa Bay of, you want to win a shootout? We can do that. You want to win 1-0? We can do that. You want to play a certain style? We can do that. It doesn't always need to be one way. It doesn't need, we only score sort of like the Bruins. We score so much on the power play with one line. That's our thing. Tampa Bay, if they're struggling in one area, they'll find another way to do it.
Yeah, so we're going right down my list of points. This is great.
That's
right
just because we're great hockey minds, Durso.
Sure, of course. Look, I've said, all right, they built this whole thing, right? And actually, it's funny. I was thinking about just a few minutes ago before we started, and I'm like, name me a free agent acquisition that they've gotten that's really a key guy. Because guess what? Most of these guys that are on this team were either draft picks or they traded for them when it was time to go for it. Even right down to Ryan McDonough was a trade. You almost think after a certain amount of time, you're like, oh, they signed it, like whatever. No, he was a trade acquisition first, They knew how to keep the band together. They go out and they bring back the same team that finally won it all last September. They pretty much run it back with that group and then go halfway through the year and go, wait a minute, you know what? If we had David Savard, that might put us over the top even more than we were last year. And it works, and they win again. You know, I saw this last night, and it's astounding. So they go to the Cup final in 2015 and lose to Chicago in 6 games. The next year, they were 1 win away from making the Stanley Cup final. They lost in 7 in the conference final. They missed the playoffs in 17. In 18, they also went 7, going to the conference final, lose there. Then they have the infamous, now totally infamous, sweep from Columbus in 2019, and they've won 2 Stanley Cups in back-to-back years. But think about that. They're 2 wins away from 4 Cup final appearances or 5 Cup final appearances in 7 years.
You know what, though? I think that matters, though. Like, when you think of, now that we have hindsight and we see how they've taken those strides, what you just mentioned, and I'm big with this with growth of sports, is, you know, Stamkos and these players who have been involved, and this franchise in general. They needed those Game 7 losses. They needed that sweep to build them into the powerhouse, to understand mentally how to get through some hurdles, to understand the physicality of that next level. You know, all those losses and those painful moments that you experience, you bottle that all up. Maybe, you know, I'm just hypothetically speaking, right? Let's say that Game 7 that they lose in 2017, 2018, when they were in that range and they were losing.
Yeah.
You work harder in the gym. You train differently in the offseason. All that just impacts where they are now. And, you know, it's a big part of sports that people I don't know if they give it enough credit. Now, when they win, you look at it that way. But, you know, I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot in general in all sports.
Well, sure. And this is why it's so astounding now. The narrative changes because you do win. If they don't win last year, if they don't win this year and make it back-to-back or win just one or whatever, we're not looking at it the same way. This went from looking at the team that can't get there, can't get over the hump, can't win the Cup. They got all these great players. They can't win. Now they've won back-to-back, and we're almost so focused on the 2 back-to-back Cups at the end of this that you almost forget to go back to when they made the final in 15 and coming up 1 game short of making the final 2 more years down the road to go. We'll never see anything like this again, maybe with the way the cap is structured, because look how good they are and how well they've built it. I mean, think about this too. They've got the best goalie in the league. They've got the best defenseman in the league. They've got 3 of the best forwards in the league. They've probably got the best coach in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, but you know what we talk about?
They're the best organization in sports, or in the NHL.
Yeah, but we talk about depth. And we talk about how all these pieces fit perfectly with their stars that you just mentioned. And the stars are going to be there. But now you really have to tweak those depth pieces, which, you know, it's easier to find depth pieces than it is the stars. You need Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman. You need those guys. You need Vasilevsky. You need those players. But it is hard to maneuver with the salary cap now that we know about their issues. We know about fighting through the cap. Now it's time to reshape, and I don't think it's going to be easy as it seems.
No, I don't either. And look, we said it earlier on one of the previous episodes, and finally we actually heard it from John Cooper after all this is over. They knew coming in. This is it. This is not going to be the same team next year. It was not going to be the same thing as a year ago when you win the first time and go, we can run it back because there's a way to do it. Now you have to get creative. You're going to have to make changes. Don't expect to see certain players still there. You've got expiring contracts in Gaudreau and Coleman, so they're going to go, and I'm sure they're huge pieces. I think Tyler Johnson's probably played his last game as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think he's poised to be the pick for Seattle, quite honestly. And look, credit to him. He scored 2 goals in a single game in this Stanley Cup final. And earlier in the year, he was on waivers and nobody wanted him because nobody likes the contract, right? So he's gonna, if this is how he goes out, take your 2 rings and enjoy every minute of it, because it's quite a run and quite a story. But that's exactly it. Like, we finally heard. And here's the thing, too. I said on the last show, because we weren't there yet, we weren't at the finish line yet. It was 3-1 now. I was going to hold off until it was over to give a thought on the Tampa Bay Lightning and the whole overall thing. And I've seen it enough. And as a matter of fact, Greg Wyshynski wrote the story that had the message that I was going to convey anyway. Enough with the cap stuff with them for this year. The rules are the rules. They played by the rules. They did it the right way. And whether you like it or not, don't hate the player, hate the game. And the game was, you're allowed to do that. And if you don't like it, then that's on the ownership and the Players Association who agrees to the CBA and structures it that way. So don't hate the team that found a way to be, like, as I said, that was smart enough to navigate it properly and made it work and brought back the same group.
I agree.
Like, you can't hate that.
I agree completely.
It's a respect to them.
If the league allows for it to happen, it's more of show your frustration towards allowing it to happen and all that. I don't have an issue
as a league though, not against the team that actually found a way to exploit it the right way.
Yeah, but some of these people who are frustrated on Twitter and social media and they're bothered by it, they have one level of thinking. They don't dive deeper. They don't think, oh, well, this is really the league and Gary Bettman and the union and this and that. They just scream at the team that does it because that's the easy on-surface thing to do, and you got to actually use your brain to dive deeper into why it happened.
And that was the line in Wyshynski's article, which was, you're upset that your team's not smart enough to do it this way. You know, that's what you're upset about. It's not that you're upset that they did it.
If your team won doing this, is anyone going to be complaining in your city that they utilized the cap and structurally planned around it? Absolutely not. Now, I do want to touch on one thing with the Habs because I think this is fascinating. So things I feel like they're in such a bad spot now with what's next, only because of this. When you make a run, what is next year's expectations? And now, if you get to the second round, like, let's be realistic, right? We love the story. Amazing. You can go on a ride like this in hockey, and it's beautiful. But they overseeded expectations. You look at how many wins they had in the regular season, and it was less, it was less than some of the teams that missed out in other divisions. So if you go to the second round next year and lose in 6 games, is that a disaster? Do you start firing the GM? Like, where do you go from here where the fans are satisfied? Because obviously you want to grow, but is it real? I mean, is it real to say, if you're a Habs fan, the only way you take a step in the right direction now is if you win the Stanley Cup next year? I just think that's so unfair with a young core and a young unit.
Well, let's just ask the Dallas Stars how they feel after being there a year ago, too. You know, they didn't make the playoffs. You know,
San Jose had a couple runs, then they kind of, flipped the other way. I mean, it happens.
Well, yeah, you know why? Because it's really hard to win the Stanley Cup, and it's even harder to win it 2 years in a row doing it the way that they just did and things like that. Like, it's hard, and that's the beauty of it. When it comes down to it, when you finally watch somebody win it, it's knowing how hard it is to do. It's knowing how much goes into it, and it's the beauty of it is also finding out, whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's next week, finding out what guys went through to get to that point. Like, it just came out not long ago. Nikita Kucherov played with, I think, a fractured rib, they said. Like, you kidding?
Did you see his presser, by the way?
Yes, I did.
Did you think it was outrageous? I mean, look, a couple Bud Lights in front of him. But he's chirping the Montreal fans as if winning their first game in the Stanley Cup Final shouldn't be celebrated.
Well, winning their first game in a Stanley Cup Final since 1993. Like, dude, you weren't even born yet, you know.
Yeah, a little aggressive, but it doesn't. I won't lose sleep over it.
Well, neither will I, because at the end of the day, what I saw a lot of on Twitter is absolutely right, and it goes back to what I had said when I was laughing about Philip Deneau and the pizza thing, right? We don't see it enough. Give us, that's personality. That's a guy who is like, exactly, that he wasn't hiding his emotions. He's pumped up that he just won another Stanley Cup, and he's there to tell everybody about it. And you know what? I'm going to tie it into another point that I have in my notes then, because he wasn't wrong when he went off about all the stuff with Andrei Vasilevsky. He's not wrong. Like, the guy didn't win the Vezina this year, didn't win the Vezina last year. He's won the Stanley Cup twice and closed it out with shutouts. Yeah, but he was kind of
throwing it the other way, where it's like, whoever that guy was.
I know. Now that's a little
extreme.
I think that's a little ridiculous, but then again, like, you almost, like, the problem is I can't tell if he's doing it on purpose, like, to sit there and say, oh, whoever that guy's, or if he's really just like, the adrenaline is just flowing at that point, and he's sitting down, he's got a beer with them, like, you're just in celebration mode. You kind of don't care anymore what it sounds like. Like, it's not running through the filter that it normally does when these guys get up there and come out with.
You mean he wasn't going to tell us that he enjoyed getting pucks deep and good forecheck,
right?
Good
like,
back check.
You aren't going to get the cliche machine out, and you like, this was a guy who was just going to sit there and he's real and he's off the cuff and it's not running through the filter. It's just coming, and you could, I mean, if you couldn't tell, like, but that's great. That's great. You know what I mean? Like,
it is. By the way, Vasilevsky, dude, it's really unbelievable. It's unbelievable how strong he is. And we talked about the goalie matchup heading into this series, and it's crazy how much with Carey Price losing a game 1-0, with Carey Price losing games that were close. Now, look, Tampa had their strong games. They won 6-3, one of them. The first game was a bit of an ass kicking. I'm not telling you that Carey Price played this insane perfect one, but I mean,
Right.
It's a team sport and all. But, you know, the get out dueled that much when you're that good, Carey Price is that good, and to get out dueled that much, just it shows you where Vasilevsky is, and that's not to knock Carey Price because he's insanely good. Insanely good. In fact, you know, what's crazy is going back to Coffee with Brodes. That same commenter said this statement. The Habs only got there because of a hot goalie. Now, I lost my mind because do you watch hockey? I mean, that's how any team makes a run. The Tampa Bay Lightning stole 2 games because of their hot goalie. Hot goalies is how you win a Stanley Cup. So how do you criticize the Canadiens for getting there because of a hot goalie? It just makes no sense.
Sure. Now, I want to tie it in because you're also making it about Vasilevsky as much as you are about Carey Price, right? So, all right. So I said last show that what was there 2.5 minutes left in the second period, and Montreal had the first goal, so it's 1-0, and they're hanging on to that at that point. And I was just getting the sense that if they got out of that with the lead, I'm like, it's feeling like a Carey Price isn't letting one in tonight kind of game, and you're 1 goal away from this thing being over. When Tampa scored the first goal of this game, and there's 7.5 minutes left in the 6.5 minutes left in the second period, I'm already thinking that way. And it got to the late second period, I'm going, it's going to be one of those. I think it's going to be another closeout shutout. Like, it really feels like a closeout shutout kind of night from him. I mean, here's how impressive he is, by the way. You know, and by the way, here's the other thing too about it. The way, and perfectly, by the way, when you tweeted it out from the Brodes media account, you captured this on your clip as well. The look on Cole Caulfield's face after that goal goes in said it all. They knew they weren't scoring a goal that night. And it's just, oh no, we let one in, so now we don't have the ability to get the first one, the only one that matters possibly. It was as if it was over right then and there.
Now, after that first goal, though, I just want to touch on Colton because he scored the goal.
Sure.
Now, he's a Jersey kid. He's from the area, and he grew up around here. And, you know, I got mutual friends that are really good friends with him and all. And I got an interesting story on him, which it shows you the difference of some of these players. And,
sure.
You know, like, we always skate in the summers, a bunch of more back when, you know, I was still playing and whatnot. And, we were like, we play 5-on-5, we play 4-on-4, we just skate up and down the ice, get our legs going, good conditioning. And after one of the skates, he like really wanted to focus on some skill work. And, you know, guys like me are like, yeah, okay, bud, I'll go fucking hit the showers. Like, I'm good to go. I bagged my ass off here. I'm beat. And he stays out there and he works on skill work, and he works on all the tiny little things that are so important to me. It's like, dude, I play D3 NCAA. I'm ready to play 12 minutes a night, chip the pucks off the glass. I'm good. But, you know, like those, like he's winning a Stanley Cup and scoring the goal 1-0 against Carey Price to solidify the cup. And, you know, I date back to, like, that's the difference. That's the difference from D3 NCAA athlete that decided I like hockey, but I don't love it as much as maybe the NHL stars. But just something that stayed with me, and something that, you know, I remember hearing the stories and all, and just watching him shoot, and it's just the difference. It's the little things that truly are the difference. And I didn't have it, and that's why I'm speaking to this microphone.
Right. And, well, it's funny because it wasn't even a skill play. It's go to the net, put your stick on the ice, and let your teammate
put himself in a good area.
Yeah, but he did. He went to the right spot, and he did everything. And he's been a good player for them throughout the year. It's not like he's just showed up Johnny on the spot right now to score a big goal in the cup final. He's been around for most of the year and doing pretty well, all things considered. Like he's another one of these guys in Tampa's case that just starts to emerge as the year goes on. Like, all of a sudden you feel like he scores the first couple goals of his career or whatever, and you go, well, who's this kid? And then by the end of the year, you're going, oh yeah, he's a real valuable piece to this team. You know, like that's how quickly it transforms with Tampa Bay. It's why I think they're the best organization in hockey. They build it so well, and they're, you know what? It's less about drafting and more about development once they do draft the guys, because they draft guys all over the place. They're signing undrafted free agents, and so many of them have panned out, and that's really the thing. Like, they make it happen with the way that they teach these players and get them ready for life at the NHL level. And then they come in and they are playing with elite players, no question about it. Like, but not all of them get to be on the same line as the elites, right? Like, not everybody's playing with Nikita Kucherov. There's only a couple guys who can. So you have to make the best of your situation and where you play. And that to me is how we watched the end of this series. And you know what? After a certain point, Nikita Kucherov had 3 goals in a series, and that's the most on the team, obviously, in the final. But you go, didn't happen in the last couple of games. The last couple of games, it was Barclay Goodrow,
he
Pat
cranked
Maroon.
one off the pipe there, and right before that overtime, wide open back door.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't mean that they're not dangerous. I mean, Braden Point had one that he hit the post also in game 4, and I'm going, that was the perfect play. Everything about that was perfect, and he hit the post. It happens, but and it says a lot that Braden Point went the whole series after scoring 14 goals in 3 rounds and comes out with nothing, at least in terms of goals, and yet we're talking about Ross Colton and Barclay Goodrow and Pat Maroon and Blake Coleman. And these are the guys who totally turned everything around. Like Ross Colton gets that goal. The game fell over because all it seemed like they needed was one. There it was. Blake Coleman's goal at the end of the second period of game 2. Turning point. And you knew it.
Changing.
Right. Like series changing. And we wondered if that would be the case. And it does define it now, because imagine if that's a 1-1 game going to the third period and the way Montreal's playing. A funny thing too is when Colton scores that goal in the second period to give Tampa the lead and it feels like game over, Montreal was playing better at that moment. They had the better period. They got outplayed in the first period. They're coming back. They're looking strong at 5-on-5. You're almost wondering, are they going to find a way to get one? And Vasilevsky did what he had to do and stood in there. And this is to credit Vasilevsky for everything that he's done over the course of it, because we'll just go down the list of numbers at this point, because it's 5 straight series that have ended with a shutout win, 4 this playoff, 3 of which came after a loss, 2 of which, the last 2, were 1-0 shutout wins. That's insanely impressive.
Really
I don't know.
is.
I don't know if we're ever going to see a run like that again.
I was just going to say, I think that's so absurd and so outrageous that we're not even processing what's going on because it's so raw and so in the moment. Sort of like Pat Maroon. It's so simple to say, yeah, you won 3 straight Stanley Cups, but what? You dream of winning 1. I don't even know what winning 3, and not even. I won 1 in '97. I won 1 in '02, and then I won 1 when I was a veteran playing 10 minutes a night when I was 37 years old. No, you legitimately just won 3. He doesn't know what it feels like in the last couple of years to be done in May. Now, I'm texting a couple of my buddies last night after the game's over, and we're just shooting the shit. And I'm like, dude, you've been home since May. You've been home since
yeah, right?
May. It's July. That's 3 straight years of not knowing what it's like to be home in May, golfing with the boys, because you're getting shit canned on the beach holding the Stanley Cup. I mean, it's absurd. So Maroon doing it, Vasilevsky with those numbers you just spit out. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
So what's really funny too is because you're right. And here's honestly, when you just said that winning 1 in like you said, 97 or whatever, the first name that popped into my mind was Mark Recchi. Wins with Pittsburgh early in his career, wins with Carolina, midpoint, closes it out with one with Boston. And it's 3 different years, almost 3 different eras, if you will, and 3 completely different teams, but it took 15 years of a career, 20 years of a career to put that together. Here's a guy who goes back and all it was, I'm going to go play for my hometown team. This is 3 years ago. I'm going to go play for my hometown team in St. Louis. And you're bottom feeders in January, and you come back and win the cup. And then you go, all right, and by the way, funny enough, I mentioned who's the free agent signing for Tampa? Who's the guy they signed through free agency that you go, oh, he's the big name? The best name I've got is Pat Maroon.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
That's the best one I've got is that he signed.
That's a pretty big one, though.
It turns out to be huge, but you're sitting there going, it's not they didn't get Andre Palat through free agency. They drafted him and molded him. They didn't get Braden Point through free agency, but they did get Pat Maroon through free agency. And now he's, I feel like, by the way, I feel like we spoke that one into existence, by the way, because we just kept talking about that limited group of players who have won 3 straight with different teams. And there it is. I
crack up every time the broadcast reference it, by the way, because it was so random. It was like the Lightning win game 2 or game whatever, right. And we're just already like, okay, so who was the first person? You know what I mean? It just came out of nowhere. I thought it was hysterical. Now, I know you said you have more outside of this series, more just in general. I'll ask you this right here. Do you have enough where Because look, the season's over now, so things have changed a little bit in the landscape of our reaction. Is that something you think we should save for maybe the next conversation we have, or does it tie in perfectly with where we're at? Because now, look, we still want to talk hockey. We got expansion draft. We have some things coming up, but there's some time. So I'll just ask you: Do you think what you have on here can?
I think right now we're reacting to the season coming to an end, this final game, what Tampa's done over the last 2 years. I don't think we need to even branch into where it goes now. I think that's I think that would be a great segue for whatever's to come. I mean, if we're getting, if this is where we're getting close to wrapping it up, I feel like we absolutely, by the way, we didn't say it right off the hop, obviously, but we really should just, congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're an incredible team. We've talked about it multiple times. We knew that this was we knew they were going to be one of the players at the end. We knew it was going to be possible. And, I wonder a lot of things with the series, but you can't wonder what doesn't happen, right? Like all we can take is that Montreal got there, Tampa Bay got there, and we saw Tampa Bay take that next step that puts them above everybody else in the league. We can wonder what would have happened if Vegas would have made it to the final instead of Montreal. We can wonder what would have happened if the Islanders would have somehow been able to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, but that's not how it works. And we got a really good thing. And I do hope also, one of the things I want to say about the Montreal Canadiens, because credit to them for a great run, credit to them for making this playoff even more exciting throughout as we watch this run. First of all, it was fun. It's fun watching an underdog go further than you expect and come together and everything go in the right place. Quite a combination of young guys who have bright futures and veterans who showed they still have a little something left in the tank. I don't know what's to come for them, but I do certainly hope that we're no longer talking about this team after winning the qualifying round and then taking the Flyers to 6 games in the first round of last year's playoff and now making it to the Cup final this year. I certainly hope they're on people's radar again as a good team that should make the playoffs at least. Like I don't want to sit there and say they're Cup contenders. That everybody could be a Cup contender,
just
everybody might not be.
Hard competitive team.
Right, but I hope that people look at them and go, they're built to be a playoff team now. They've been there 2 years running. They've won series 2 straight years. They're in this thing, and I hope that that's the way that we feel now, because they're certainly on my radar. I kind of kept them on the borderline going into this year. I'm like, they could crack it as a 4, but I don't know if they will. And now I have no doubts that they should be in the playoffs next year. The way that they have built it, the way that they should be able to keep a lot of these pieces together, continue to grow from the youth end of it as well. The sky's the limit for that team to an extent. I mean, they really do have the potential to be right where they were in the last couple of weeks. And they certainly, to me, have the potential to be a playoff team moving forward. So I hope we give them credit. But absolutely. But going back to Tampa and everything they've done, like, they're the best team in the league, and we've known that for 3 years now, and we were stunned that year that they win 62 games in a regular season and then don't win a playoff game. And we started, what's funny? We started to doubt and wonder if it was ever going to happen. And now, boy, have they showed us, because this might be one of the most talented teams. It doesn't happen a lot. In my lifetime, I believe, well, depends on how you want to characterize it, I guess, because Pittsburgh did win back-to-back or in the early 90s as well. But it's only happened 3 times that I can remember. It's the 2 Detroit teams in the late 90s, Pittsburgh going back-to-back a few years back.
Detroit was probably just – see, the Penguins back-to-back, I think this Tampa team was stronger. But when you go back to the Red Wings, that era was so dominant that they probably – because it was longevity, too, factors. And not that – I mean, you laid it out. They were not far off, but – the Red Wings dynasty was so damn iconic. I don't think that I can place Tampa Bay even skill-wise. Even though they're skilled as hell, it just doesn't relate to the iconicness of those teams. No, but I think that we can call the Tampa Bay Lightning of the last 2 years probably the best back-to-back champion of the Cap era. Because once you go into the Cap era, it's totally changed. And I think now that's, that's where I'm at this point with that. I think they're just an outstanding team with so many good players, and I'm curious to see what happens to them over this offseason, because it should look different a little bit, but I feel like it's going to look fairly similar, and that means that they should be players for a long time to come. I mean, imagine what happens if this is only the beginning for a lot of these guys. I mean, yeah, maybe a lot of them are talking about this as the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. They're still doing it. It's like, whoa, hold on. We just talked about the Red Wings. Well, maybe it could be that. That was the point of me talking earlier about everything from 2015 to now, where
they're that close to 5 cup final appearances in 7 years. We may never see anything like that again, where a team has that kind of longevity to be that close to winning 5 years out of 7,
How much of this
and who knows if it keeps going next year or the year after, you know what I mean? Like, they've got a lot ahead of them.
How much of this is, though, from us looking at it, the Detroit Red Wings are come on. I mean, look, we're talking about original 6, and it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. How much of this is look, I know we love hockey, but it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. So no one talks about 2015, 2017, 2018 Tampa Bay Lightning like you would and an original 6-team Chicago, Toronto, Detroit. It doesn't have the same impact. Nashville, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. That doesn't hit home even to us as hockey fans. The same way we would look at a team like San Jose went to the Cup Finals. We don't talk about them or think about them the same way we would a Pittsburgh team that gets to the finals and loses, or another team that gets to the final and loses. That's more of a powerhouse fan base.
But I wonder if we should be, because of the fact that they do have star power in a big way. Like, you're right. We would talk about those Pittsburgh teams, but we would talk about those Pittsburgh teams because almost before we even say the Pittsburgh Penguins, we're throwing Sidney Crosby's name in front of it and going, well, those teams, and look, every time just about, there's only one time I can think of where they've made the final and lost, and that was a Detroit year. But other than that, like, they make the final, they're winning. Like Crosby makes the final, he's been winning most recently anyway. There was that back-to-back we're talking about. We don't have that with other teams like that. You need to see if a team who loses, like you said, like Tampa. I don't know if anybody really thinks that much about Tampa losing 6 years ago anymore, or did going in. It's less about that and more about, like, I think everybody just thinks about who they lost to. And again, that was the final year that Chicago won a cup that was 3 over 6 years, like, it's just as good, like it's almost just as good of a run. And we're just really seeing some super talented teams that continue to do it year in and year out, because we felt that way about Chicago. Then you bring up the Crosby Pittsburgh teams. Now you're looking at these Tampa teams. Like, this is how you've got to build it. You've got to build it for longevity and to have as many of these pieces in place as you can from top to bottom to make it work. And it does, in addition to having those guys up front, which all of those teams seem to collectively do, whether it was the Chicago teams with Kane and Taves, or the Pittsburgh teams with Crosby and Malkin, or these Tampa teams with Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point. It doesn't matter. You got to go to the back end and find that defenseman who is stabilizing the whole unit from, no matter where they play, and the goaltender who shuts everything down. And I don't think we're going to see the same situation as the last back-to-back winner, where within a couple years of winning the second one in the back-to-back, the goalie is shipped out for, in a trade. I don't think Andre Vasilevsky's going anywhere. I think that he's settled right into Tampa Bay, and he's going to have a long career there because they know exactly what they've got, and what they've got is the best. They've got the best goalie in the world.
Yeah, it's actually amazing. It really is. So I think that's a great spot to kind of end it. I'm looking forward to kind of how we adjust after the Stanley Cup Finals, talking hockey. The expansion draft's going to be very interesting.
It's only 2 weeks away, so we're not that far off.
You're right. So I'm looking forward to it. So
we got a lot of stuff. Expansion draft is 2 weeks. NHL draft is right after. Free agency is the week after that. Like, it's all going to come out really quick and in short order, and it should be exciting because I feel like now the real work gets to begin. Like, we've been sitting for every other team. Like, you're right. You're talking about those guys who've been home since May. We've been sitting in a holding pattern for that type of stuff. Like, it's been waiting for this and waiting for expansion to come, and I can't wait for it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't say it better. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening, and we will see you on the next Open Ice Hits.